Welcome to the 5th week of financial management online. It's been an interesting week because we saw Treasury bill yields going as low as 5.9%. That was the 1 year. It was an all-time low for Sri Lankan Treasury bills, right? So Sri Lankan Treasury bills have never gone below 6%, but now it is there. Now, this is very much in line with what happened in the US. Right? US interest rates went to 0%, and the 10-year bond went to negative levels. Right? In the US, that means if you invest in a bond, you had to pay money, which is quite unusual and never happened before. So US interest rates went to an all-time low, and Sri Lankan interest rates also last week went to an all-time low. Now, this is after the central bank injected liquidity through a reserve cut. They cut reserves by 2%. So reserves, which used to be 4%, is now down to 2%. And that pumped 115 billion rupees into the market, and interest rates naturally came down because of a very large supply of money in the market. Right? So money circulation and money supply in the market has increased, and interest rates along with that has come down. Now, we might also be looking at a possible interest rate cut, because the SDF rate is now at 5.5%, and which is not sustainable. So rates may have to come down by at least 1%, right? So, and that is likely to happen very soon. So that's why the market is factoring all that in. Usually, markets will factor anticipated moves beforehand, right? So if there's an interest rate cut, the market will not wait until the cut is effectively made. They will keep factoring it in. That's why interest rates, exchange rates, all of that go up and down in anticipation of what the next move is going to be. Yeah. And also we saw Sri Lanka development bond auction, $100 million. That was announced 2 days back. So the full auction had been fully subscribed after quite a while, after maybe 3 months. During the lockdown period, there were a couple of auctions, but they were the amount of subscriptions received or the bids received were very poor, very low. Right now, once things opened up, we have seen subscriptions or the number of bids received increasing. So that's a good development. Maybe during the lockdown period, people didn't have access to their offices, and customers who had the capacity to invest in development bonds, in dollar bonds, could not access their office, and they couldn't perhaps submit their bids. So things have changed, and we saw 100 million bids being accepted by the central bank. So those bids came at around 5.5 to 7% nearly. Now that is also good development, because sovereign bonds, as you all know, are going at 17-18%, maybe close to 20%. But now the Sri Lanka development bond has come much below that, at 7%, which is more sustainable than the exorbitantly high 17-18% that we have seen on sovereign bonds. Right, and also there was some news that the central bank eased the suspension they had imposed on banks on investing in sovereign bonds. So earlier, if you were a bank, you were not supposed to invest in sovereign bonds. It was suspended for 3 months, but now central bank has relaxed to a certain extent. New money received by FCBU from overseas can be invested in sovereign bonds. Right. So there has been a little bit of relaxation, and I think we should expect things to ease off a little more as we go on and as things get back to normal. Right. Also, we saw Hemas Holdings, top conglomerate in the country. So we saw a lady taking up the CEO's position for the first time. Right? So Steve Enderby was doing quite a good job. He was battle-hardened. He had to face the Easter attack last week, meaning he had to weather the storm. Company was under a lot of stress last year. And this year he saw the COVID-19 impact on the company, on Hemas. So he was battle-hardened, and he's stepping down. Kasturi Wilson is taking over, right? So her story is also quite amazing. She was, well, a former netball captain of the country, and now she's taking over a huge conglomerate. The first time in the country that a lady is taking over as CEO of a conglomerate, right? So that's amazing news. I hope she does well. I'm sure she will do well, right? She's known to do well. Whatever she does just turns into gold. She has the magical touch. So interesting days. Right. So we begin from where we left off last week. Right? We covered liquidity. And if you all could remember, we did the net liquidity position, which is the supply minus the demand for liquidity. Then we did how to estimate liquidity needs. Right. Then the types of funds. There are three types of deposits. Right. Hot money, which is not sticky at all. Vulnerable funds, and stable funds. Right. So we did how to estimate your liquidity needs. Yeah. So that was liquidity, which we covered last week. Then today we will move on to a concept called time value of money. Time value of money. Now I wonder how many of you have heard of time value of money. Right. Well, what it means is, now let's take your grandfathers, right? Or the great grandfather. Maybe he was around about 100 years ago, during the First World War, right? So your great grandfather may have earned perhaps a monthly salary of 50 rupees a month, right? So that would have been his monthly salary 100 years ago. 50 rupees a month. Right? This was in 1920. He earned 50 rupees a month. 100 years ago, 50 rupees a month was a thumping amount, a thundering amount, right? With 50 rupees a month, you can live for 2 years easily, isn't it? Okay, so 100 years on, 2020, the grandchild starts working, and he's a great admirer of the great grandfather. Right? Great admirer of the great grandfather. He has heard so many stories of the great grandfather. So he wants to go follow the footsteps of his great grandfather. Right, now, having said that, will the grandson be willing to work for a salary of 50 rupees a month? The same salary that the great grandfather drew 100 years ago. Do you think? Right, so do you think the grandchild will be willing to work for the same salary that the great grandfather worked 100 years ago? The answer is no, because 50 rupees, if your salary is 50 rupees today, like 100 years ago, you would have lived for 2 years with 50 rupees salary. But today, you can't even have a cup of tea. No? Even a plain tea will cost you about 100 bucks, right? So this is out. This one fantastic. But look at the amounts, it's still the same. 50 rupees 100 years ago, today is also the same amount. Right? The face value or the nominal value is the same. But why aren't you happy with 50 rupees today if you were happy with 50 rupees 100 years ago? Why not? What is the difference between the two? This is the difference. This is the difference. Right. So this is 100 years apart. The same amount that you receive 100 years apart is although the nominal amount is the same, the actual value is very, very different, right? So that's why 50 rupees received 100 years ago is not the same as 50 rupees that you receive today. But why? Why is that? Now, if you all have any questions, you can always type it on chat. Right. Why do you think 50 rupees received 100 years ago is not the same as 50 rupees that you received today? Can you type some answers? Very good. Inflation. Fantastic. What else? Right. One reason is obviously inflation. Government policy changes. Excellent. Purchasing power. Fantastic. Rupee depreciation. Yes. Demand. Okay, what about opportunity cost? Yes, high demand, spending patterns. Very good. Opportunity cost. Cost of living. Yeah. Inflation or the cost of living. Changes in needs. Yeah, opportunity cost. Why I said opportunity cost was, if you had received 50 rupees 100 years ago, you could have invested. Maybe you could have purchased a block of land for 50 rupees. But if you receive 50 rupees today, you can't even purchase a bus ticket to go and see the land. No? Right? So such is the change. Right? Such are the dynamics in this market. Things keep changing. And also there is uncertainty. Right? Uncertainty. And volatility. So prices are volatile, they keep going well. In Sri Lanka, usually prices go only up, they never come down. But prices keep changing, they keep fluctuating, maybe going up, maybe coming down. Like oil prices, for example, global oil prices went to negative levels, right? I explained during the first week. So there is a lot of volatility in markets, also uncertainty. You never know what is going to happen. No, now, how many of you expected COVID-19? 6 months ago, how many of you were expecting the market, the entire country, the entire world to be locked down? Not a single. No one expected. So things are so uncertain. You never know what is going to happen next week. Right? Never know. Okay. So for these reasons, 50 rupees that you received 100 years ago is not the same as 50 rupees that you receive today. Simple as that. Right? This concept is called time value of money. Time value of money. Okay, I hope that's understood. Yeah, so let's move on. Time value of money. Huh? Right, so I'll erase this. Right. Now, a very simple thing. Now, let's say you invested $100 in a bank at an interest rate of 10% for 1 year, right? So, this is today, 27th June. You're investing $100. I'll write it below. June 2020, you're investing $100 at a rate of 10% for 1 year. Let's say it matures on 27 June 2021. I'll ask you a simple question. How much do you receive when this matures in 1 year? How much do you receive after 1 year? Right. Simple calculation. So you receive, your capital is 100. Capital 100 plus you receive interest at 10%, isn't it? So you receive capital plus interest after 1 year, right? This is your capital which you invest, and when it matures, you receive capital plus interest, correct? So how much is your capital plus interest? Capital is $100 plus interest 100 into 10%, isn't it? Simple calculation. Now this is very, very simple, right? What you did in grade 2, very simple. But remember, you need to understand the basics. If you get the basics right, it will really help, because this calculation that you now will do will be needed for the next, I would say 10 to 15 years, right? Because all the exams that you do, you need to use this equation. 50% of what you learn is based on this, I would say. If you understand this, then you'll do well. Right? Okay, so very, very simple. Right, now this is your investment, right, of 100 plus capital interest 10%, 100 into 10%. So in grade 2, we did common factors. Now you can take the common factor of 100 out. So it's 100 into 1 plus 10%. Clear? I hope that is clear. Right. And you will get an answer of 110. Yes, all of you rightly pointed out. You end up with 110. Now the question is, when it matures, let's say you don't withdraw the money, right? You let the deposit continue for another 1 year. So the deposit matures on the 27th of June 2021, and let's say you roll it over for another 1 year. So it matures again on 27th June 2022. How much do you get when this matures, right? You're reinvesting your capital plus interest. How much do you get when this one matures? Right. Now this is after 1 year. today, or year 0, you have 100. After 1 year, you have 100 into 1 plus 10%. What happens at the end of the second year? How much will you end up with? If you're reinvesting at 10%, again, you continue at 10%. So nothing changes. You roll over the investment of, now it's capital plus interest comes to 110. You roll it over for another year at the same rate, 10%. How much do you receive at the end of the second year? Simple question. What do you all think? Again, what you learned in grade 2. What are your answers? Can you all type? Yes, very good. So you end up with 121. Okay. Why? Because you are investing now 110, right? It's capital plus interest. You get 110 here, which you roll over at a rate of 10%, right? So it's 1 plus 10% again, and you end up with 121. Now my question is, how did you get 110? 110 here is 100 into 1 plus 10%. Excuse me. Right? So 110 is 100 into 1 plus 10%. So instead of writing 110, may I write 100 into 1 plus 10%? I'm substituting 110 with 100 into 1 plus 10%. Right? Are these the same? Yes, they are the same. Into 1 plus 10%. Right? So that is this. Okay, so we now get 100 into 1 plus 10% times 1 plus 10%. Okay, so you have 1 plus 10% times 1 plus 10%, which is 100 into 1 plus 10% squared. Yeah. Right. So this is 121. What if you roll over 121 for another year? Matures 27 June 2023. How much do you get rate matures? So it's year 3. The third year, it will be 121 into 1 plus 10%, right? Instead of writing 121, can I write 100 into 1 plus 10% squared into 1 plus 10%, right? So this is 121 into 1 plus 10%, which is 100 into 1 plus 10% cube. Then the fourth year, it will be 100 into 1 plus 10% to the power 4. Nth year, it will be 100 into 1 plus 10% to the power n. I'm not sure whether you can see that. So that's how it works, right? Okay. Now instead of putting values, may I use, instead of capital, I will say this is the present value, right? the present value is 100. Then the interest rate is 10%. And this is the time. N is time. And the maturity value, let's call it the future value. Right. So we have calculated all the future values, right? So this is the future value in the first year, which is 100, 1 plus 10%. So 100 is the present value, 1 plus 10% is R, right? So it's present value into 1 plus R. Here it is present value 1 plus R into the power 2. That is what you get at the end of the second year, right? So that's the future value at the end of the second year. Isn't it? Future value at the end of the second year, right? The future value at the end of the nth year. How do you calculate? It's given here, future value at the end of the nth year is the present value into 1 plus R, 10% is R to the power N. Very important equation which you need to memorize. So this equation is very, very important. It can either make or break you. You need to memorize this. Future value is the present value into 1 plus R to the power N. When you go to bed, you must always tell this. Unless you are married. So those of you who are single, always tell this before you go to bed. Future value is the present value into 1 plus R to the power N. Okay? Remember that. Don't ever forget. That's how you get all these equations. Now, if you were to calculate, for example, the future value in year 1 is present value 100 into 1 plus 10% to the power 1. Here, this one 1 plus 10% to the power 1 is 1 plus 10% again. And the future value at the end of year 2, 100, 1 plus 10% into the power 2. Future value at the end of year 3, 100, 1 plus 10% to the power 3. Then future value at the end of year N is your present value into 1 plus R. Sorry, it's 100 into 1 plus 10% to the power N. Okay. I hope that's clear. Any questions on this? If you do have questions, please clarify, because this is the very basic step. The most important step is the first step. If you don't understand this, it's difficult to move on. Right? Okay, so can we move on? That is what's given in this equation, right? A dollar in hand today is worth more than a dollar to be received in the future. Because if you had it now, you could invest it, earn interest, and end up with more than a dollar in the future. The process of going to future value from present value is called compounding. And so this process, the future value is equal to present value into 1 plus R to the power N, is called compounding. Compounding cash flows. That is where you get interest on interest. Okay. So it's, remember, it is called compounding. Okay. FV is future value. PV is present value. R is the interest rate or the compound rate. N is time. And 1 plus R is called the compounding factor. Write it underneath. 1 plus R is called the compounding factor. Okay. So I hope that's clear. Right. Shall we try this question, this example? It says, to illustrate, assume that you plan to deposit $100 in a bank that pays a guaranteed 5% interest each year. How much would you have at the end of year 3? Right. Assume that you plan to deposit $100 in a bank. So today, zero denotes today, year 0. You deposit $100 in a bank that pays a guaranteed interest of 5%. So interest rate is 5%. Now this R is called the compounding factor. Is 5%. How much would you earn at the end of year 3? After 3 years, how much do you earn? So N is 3. 5. The question is, how much will you earn after 3 years? What is the future value at the end of the 3rd year? Okay. So you use the same equation. Future value is equal to present value into 1 plus R to the power N. So the future value at the end of year 3, present value 100 into 1 plus R is 5% to the power 3. How much do you get? $115.76. Yes, excellent. All right. So I hope that was clear. Any questions on this? If you have any questions, we need to clarify before we move on. It's very, very critical. Now, this might define whether you pass or fail, whether you understood this. It's very important that you understand the basics. Without the basic, it is very difficult to move on. Okay, so no questions, which means you either understood everything or you understood nothing. Okay, so no questions. Very good, Johan. Thank you. Right. So let me give you an assignment. Thank you, Janetrini. Okay. Now let's say 2000 years ago. Right, 2000 years ago, let's say your great grandfather had invested $1. $1 2000 years ago. He had invested $1, right, at a rate of 1% interest rate. Just 1% interest rate. And he has, in his will, he has mentioned your name, right? You're the beneficiary to this inheritance. Inheritance of $1, which he has invested at a rate of 1% for 2000 years. So after 2000 years, how much do you get when it matures? Let's say he has invested in 1-year deposits and he has requested his bank to keep rolling it over for 2000 years until the rightful heir comes and claims it, right? Until you come and claim it. Yes, Johan, it's like in a fixed deposit, you're right. Okay, so you got this question? Your great grandfather has invested $1 2000 years ago at rate of 1%, and you're the beneficiary. Now, how much will you receive when this matures? What is the future value of this deposit? Simple question. What do you think? Can you all quickly calculate? Right, my question is, what is the future value of this deposit? The future value in 2000 years. Same equation. Remember, at the exam, you need to always write the equation. Right? Always write the equation and then substitute. That way you will not make mistakes. Okay. So the present value is $1 into 1 plus interest rate of 1%, right? Into the power 2000. How much will you receive? $436 million. Huh? You will receive 439,286,205 cents 05. $439 million. Okay. Yeah, Darshan, good question. Is this normal interest rate or annual effective rate? Right. What I meant was he is depositing $1 annually, and every year he's asking the bank to roll over with interest at a rate of 1%. Right. So if your great grandfather had done it, simple thing of investing $1 at 1%, and if he had left it for 2,000 years, today you will get $439 million. Right? You would have been the richest person in the country. You don't have to go to office. Stay at home, enjoy your money. Yeah, simple as that, right? So all you have to do is deposit $1 and keep it for the future generation. Pull it out after 2,000 years, isn't it? Yeah. Understood? So any questions? Right. So going back to Darshan's question, this is interest on interest, and you receive interest on interest, right? Now, what if you were getting simple interest? Simple interest means you don't add the interest component to the capital. Right? So every year you get interest, but it doesn't get added to the capital. So second year investment is the original capital amount. That means you're investing $1. When it matures, you get $0.01 of interest. Under normal circumstances, if it was effective interest rate or compounding interest rate, this would have got added to the interest. But if it was simple, it doesn't get added. It continues at $1. Your capital investment continues at $1. Right? If that was the difference, and this is, then how much would you end up with? Simple interest. This is compound interest. Simple interest. Future value will be the present value into 1 plus R times N. That is the difference, right? It's not R, 1 plus R to the power N, it is R times N. So going back to the same example, present value of 1 into 1 plus R is 1% times 2,000. Okay, so you would have ended up with 1 times 1 plus 20, $21. If it was simple interest, you will get only $21. Right? Just $21. Gerald, it's not 2020. It's only $21. Yeah, because your investment is 1 now, and you're investing at 1% for 2,000 years. Right. So the total interest comes to $20 plus your original capital of 1. You end up with $21. Okay, now simple interest for 2000 years will be $21. So if you, for your inheritance, if you leave $1 in this manner, just make sure you tick the compounding interest, right? Compounding interest, make sure you click that or you tick that, because by any chance, if you forget and if you tick simple interest, 2000 years, in 2000 years, your grandchildren, great grandchildren will be thinking of your parents, of your mother. Yeah. Okay, simple interest. Right, simple interest. First year, 1 year. With simple interest, right? You invest, let's say 100 at a rate of 10%. First year, whether it's simple or compound, you get the same amount, no? After 1 year, 100 into 1 plus your future value is, or the maturity value is 100 into 1 plus 10%, 110 at maturity, right? Now, if it was simple interest, and compound interest, these are two interest payment methods, simple and compound. Now, if you have simple interest, if you're depositing in simple interest, right, and the rate remains at 10%, what happens is simple interest, the capital, the interest component doesn't get added to the capital. So second year also your capital will be 100. It will be 100. Right? It will not get added on. Right? So that's the difference between simple and compound. Huh? Simple interest, your interest of 10 will not get added on to the capital. So second year also your capital amount remains at 100. Then interest accrues at 10% on 100, not on 110. So second year also your interest will be 100 into 10%, which is 10. But after 2 years, the future value in the second year will be 100 into 1 plus 10%. So at 10% you are getting interest for 2 years. Right, so for 2 years. Okay. Here you get 10% for 1 year. Then next year also you get 10% for 100 for another year. So it's 10% for 1 plus 1, 2. 2 years you are getting interest at 10% on the capital only. Right. So you will end up with 100 into 1.2, which is 120. Likewise, after 3 years, you get 100 into 1 plus 10% into 3, 130. But if it was compound interest and you deposit 100, after 1 year, you end up with 110. Because you are getting interest on interest. So second year investment amount becomes 110, right? You get at 10%, you get a total interest of 11. So your future value at the end of the second year will be 100 into 1 plus 10% square. That is the difference. This time, if it's under compound interest, will come as to the power. Simple interest will come as into. This is the difference. And the into, under simple or compound, it comes as into the power. That's because you get interest on interest. So you get 121. Whereas if it was simple, you get 120. Here you get 121, $1 more because you get interest on interest. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Okay, so let's move on. Any more questions on this? Okay, so the compounding process, a graphical representation of the compounding process. Now, what happens if you, the same example, right? Compounding interest, let's take compounding interest, the same example. Present value, let's say, is 100. The compound rate is 10%. What happens if this keeps varying? The interest rate, let's keep changing the interest rate, right? So let's say the time is 3. N is 3. What is your future value after 3 years? Future value is present value into 1 plus r to the power n. Yeah. It is 100 to 1 plus 10% to the power 3. Can you do the same calculation? You will end up with 132. Uh, 133.1, sorry. Yeah, you get 133.1. Right. Now the same calculation, this is when the interest rate is 10%. What happens if the interest rate is 0%? If there is no interest rates, you don't get any interest. Now treasury bill rates at the beginning we mentioned was at an all-time low. What if treasury bill rates drop to 0%? You don't get any interest. Then the future value will be 100 into 1 plus 0% to the power 3. So this is 100 into 1 plus 0 is 1 to the power 3. 1 to the power 3 is also 1. So 100 times 1 is 1. 100. Okay. Then what happens if your interest rate is 5%? Future value 1 plus 5% to the power 3. Like 100 into 11576. Yes. You're right, Janitrin. If the interest rate is 0, future value is equal to present value. Right? You don't get any interest at all. Then when the interest rate is 20%, your future value 100 times 1 plus 20% to the power 3. You will end up with 172.8. Okay. So what happens as the interest rate or the compounding rate keeps increasing? 0% it is 100, 5% 115, 10% 133, 20% 172. So what is your conclusion? As the compounding rate increases, what happens to the future value? For a given time period, what happens to the future value if the compounding rate keeps increasing? Yeah, future value will go up, right? So as the compounding rate keeps increasing, the future value increases. Okay? Yes, you're right. Okay, so that's why at a compounding rate of 0, your future value is unchanged. Then as the interest rate keeps going up, your future value keeps increasing for a given time period, right? For a given time period, let's say for 5 years, as the interest rate goes up or the compounding rate goes up, your future value keeps increasing. Okay, now let's try this question. Try this example. If $100 is invested in an account at an annual nominal interest rate of 10% for 5 years, what are the future values and effective interest rates for annual, semi-annual, quarterly, monthly, and daily compounding? How do you calculate? $100 was invested in an account at an annual nominal interest rate of 10% for 5 years. So the present value is 100. Future values and effective rates for annual, semi-annual, quarterly, monthly, and daily compounding. So it's annual is what we did earlier, right? It's annual compounding. That means every year you get one interest only. Semi-annual means, right? Every semi-annual period you get an interest. Okay. So the interest rate is 10%. Semi-annual means every 6 months right? Every 6 months you get interest of, if it's 6 months, that means half of 10%. So you get interest of 5. Okay. So you get 2 interest payments in this case. Okay. Now semi-annual, you get 5, an interest of 5 after 6 months, right? Now what happens is this 5 gets added on to the 100. Original investment of 100 gets added on, the 5 gets added on. And for the next 6 months, you get interest on 105. Not on 100, but 105. So there is interest on interest, a compounding effect semi-annually, not annually. Then your equation changes, right? It changes to future value is the present value into 1 plus R divided by T into N times T. Right. So what is this T? It means the number of compounding periods for a year. Number of compounding periods for a year. Right. Now if T was annual, if the compounding period was annual, T would have been 1. Right. For annual, T is 1. That means annual compounding. For a year, you get only 1 interest. Semi-annual, T would have been 2. And so quarterly, T would have been 4. And 4 quarters for a year. So you get interest 4 times every year. Monthly, T would be 12. Daily, T would be 365. And so that's how it changes. Okay, Jared, we'll come back to your question. Good one. In this case, if it's annual compounding, the future value is present value of 100 into 1 plus interest rate of 10%. 10%, right? If it's annual compounding, T is 1. 10% divided by 1 is 10% to the power n times T. N is, one example, for 5 years. Right, so n is 5. The power 5. Right. Okay, so if it's annual compounding, you will end up with, after 5 years, 161.051. Then if it's semi-annual compounding, right? It's annual, then semi-annual. Your future value will be 100 times 1 plus 10%. T is 2, so 10% divided by 2. Into the power n is 5 times 2, 10. So you will end up with 162.89. Then quarterly, you will end up with 100 into 1 plus 10% divided by T is 4, so it's divided by 4 to the power 5 times 4. $163.86. Monthly compounding, T is 12, so its future value of 100 into 1 plus 10% divided by 12 to the power 5 times 12. $164.53. And daily compounding, T is 365, so it's 164.86. Okay. Right. So everything is the same except the compounding frequency. Right. Now, given a choice, if you are given a choice of investing in in the same tenor at the same rate, 10%, for a period of 5 years, what will you prefer? Do you prefer annual compounding, semi-annual, quarterly, monthly, or daily? If you are the investor and you are given this option, 5 options to choose from, right? You get the same interest rate. Which one will you select? Will you select annual, semi-annual, quarterly, monthly, or daily? Yes, you'll go for daily. Why? Because you end up with a higher value at the end of it. And so the higher the frequency of compounding, higher the future value. Future value increases when the compounding frequency increases. Okay, which you need to remember. Right. Okay, so let's get back to our friend. One of you had asked a question. Yeah, Arun, you are right. It's n times t. But the way you have written it is wrong. It's into the power. It's not n times t. This is into the power n times t. Okay, now going back to the slides, right? Okay, so we discussed that as the interest rate increases, your future value also increases, right? Now, for a given interest rate, let's say this 20% interest rate, as the time period increases, again your future value increases, right? Well, Ezra, to answer your question, out of the topic, what do you think? What's the impact on these FD and savings interest rates dropping in order to lend at lower rates? Well, for one thing, I'm not sure whether I covered this. I think I did. Right? If a bank gets a deposit at, let's say, 10%, right? If the FD rate is 10%, good question. Slightly digressing from the topic, but quite interesting. Let me see whether I can cover it here. Let's say you get a deposit at a rate of 10%, right? At what rate should the bank lend this out if they are to make profits? What is your answer? What do you all think? Yeah, let's say it's a 1 year deposit. So some of you can't see the screen, others can. Darshini, can you see the screen? Johan, can you see? And Gerald? Niroshan, I hope you can see the screen. Okay, that's fine. Right, so you take a deposit, you accept deposits at 10% for 1 year. At what rate should you lend it out? Let's say you're lending out for 1 year. You get a deposit of, let's say, 100 at 10%, right? Now, out of this 100, 2 has to go to central bank, correct? 100 will cost you interest of 10. So you're in the red by 10. Okay, then your revenues. Right, revenues. How are you going to deploy the 100? You're going to deploy 2 at central bank. Right? 2 needs to be deposited at central bank, on which you earn 0. A reserve, 2% reserve, remember? You earn 0. Then 20% liquid asset ratio. For liquidity, you need 20%. Right? So liquid assets mean cash, treasury bills, bonds, for which you have to provide 20%. So on 20%, now treasury bill 1 year rate is 5.5. 1 year treasury bill 5.5. Right? And on cash you earn 0. So let's say weighted average on your liquid assets you earn, let us say, an average of 3%. Okay. 3%. So 3%, you earn 3% on 20, which is 0.6. So you need to cover another 9.4 minus 10 plus 0.6. You need to cover another 9.4 with deposits of 78, which means your cost will be 94 divided by 78. $12.05. Okay, so you need to lend at 12.05 at least. You have to cover the cost of 10. Right? So 12.5, you cover the cost of your deposit. Then what about your overheads? Easily 5%. And NPL, it's currently about 6%, expected to go up to 10% or even higher. Okay. So at 23.05, let's say 23%, you still break even. You don't make profits even at 23% if you lend. What about your margins? Of another 5%, 28%, isn't it? So you need to lend at least at 28% to break even, to earn a 5% return. Okay, you add this all up, you end up with 28%. Your lending rate should be 28% or higher. Which is a very, very high rate. Now, one way of reducing is to reduce your deposit cost. So when the FD rates, when all these deposit rates come down, let's say from 10%, they drop to 5%. You can reduce your lending rate to 23%. Then this will drop to 23%. Still quite high, but somewhat less. So the lower your deposit cost, the lower the lending rate can come. Okay, now 28%. How many deposits, how many products have you got going at 28%? Very few. Maybe your TODs, credit cards, and all that. Yeah, but 100% of the yes, Ezra. But 100% of your portfolio cannot be credit cards and TODs, right? Even in credit cards, credit card portfolio, your NPLs are much higher. It's not 6, it may be higher, maybe 10-15%, right? Might increase further. Also, the overhead cost of credit cards is very high. Right? So 100% cannot be credit cards and 100% cannot be TODs. You have a product suite, no? Now you have housing loans, which is going maybe at 10-11%, very low. There are personal loans going at 12-13%, right? So you have all these products. Now they also have their own admin costs and all that. Also, what you need to do is, what banks should do is, they should try and earn other income like commissions, trading income. Right? So they should try and earn in other means. So that's why traditional banking is not going to work anymore. Yeah, one is to increase CASA, but maximum you can still reduce is 10%, right? Then your lending rate will drop to 18%. Yes, increasing CASA is good. One solution. Then you should try and reduce the NPLs from 6%. You should bring it down to 0, maybe 1 or 2%. Try and reduce overheads. Okay, that's why cost cutting is very important. Yeah. So it's complicated, isn't it? If you lend at 28%, it also means it carries high risk. Okay, so I hope that was clear. Right. Okay, so getting back. Right, now let's try this set of questions. What would the future value of $100 be after 5 years at 10% compound interest rate? %10 compound rate. Okay. Very simple. You simply use the equation. Some value into 1 plus r to the power n. Some value 100. 1 plus r is 10% to the power 5. Suppose you currently have $2,000 and plan to purchase a 3-year CD that pays 4% interest compounded annually. How much would you have when CD matures? It's always good to draw the timeline. Very helpful. Right? That way you save time that you would waste reading the question 2-3 times. So you have $2,000, present value $2,000. You plan to purchase a 3-year CD. N is 3. R is 4%. What is your future value? It's 2,249 and 70. company sales in 2005 was 100 million. Sales grew at 8%. What will they be 10 years later? It's 100 million in 2005. And sales are growing at 8%. What is expected after 10 years? Future value is present value into 1 plus r to the power n. Present value of 100 into 1 plus 8% power 10. $215.89. How much would $1 grow at 5% after? How much is $1 at 5% after 100 years? Present value is $1. N is 100. R is 5%. So you get 131.5. I hope that was clear. Right. So the next area is on present values. If the future value equation is understood, then present value is very simple. Just the inverse. In many ways, present value is just the opposite of future value. Instead of compounding a value forward, you discount it back. If you know the present value, you can compound to find the future value. Well, if you know the future value, you can discount to find the present value. Okay. So this is the present value. Here you have future value. That is R, and this is N. So the future value is present value into 1 plus R to the power N. Right. Then the present value, okay, you do cross multiplication, will be future value divided by 1 plus R to the power N, which you need to know. Important question. Okay, so Ransaka, we didn't calculate AER in the previous question. All right, so let's calculate AER. Yeah, I hope this is clear. Okay. Yeah.
But then clear.
Okay, so let's say you have an option of investing in a 6-month FD, right, at 10%. Or you can invest in a 1-year FD at 10%. Two options, 6 months, either you can invest at 10%, and when it matures, you can invest for another 6 months, the same rate of 10% with interest, right? Now, which one out of these will you prefer? Will you prefer to invest for 6 months with a rollover option, or will you prefer to invest one shot for 10 years? What is the preferred period? Okay, so you prefer to invest for 6 months and then roll it over for another 6 months with interest. And let's assume interest rates will not change; they will remain unchanged into the foreseeable future. Right. So, okay, Ezra and Niroshan, why do you prefer to invest for 6 months? What is the rationale for investing for 6 months and then rolling it over? Or if I may ask you another question, right? So, which interest rate? What is the interest rate that will make you indifferent? Right? What interest rate? What 1-year interest rate will make you indifferent between investing for 1 year and investing for 6 months at 10%? Yeah. So, what is the interest rate? How do you calculate? Which interest rate will give you the same return after 1 year as investing for 6 months at 10% with rollover? Yeah, your answers are correct. If you invest for 6 months and roll it over with interest, you will get a higher return after 1 year. Now, what my question is, what is the interest rate that will make both the options identical? 1 year interest rate that will make 6 months rollover identical to investing for 1 year. Yeah. What you do is
Next.
a 6 months rollover option, right? If you are investing for 6 months and then rolling it over for another 1 year, you keep it for 1 year. Your future value based on the previous equation is 1 plus interest rate divided by 2 into the power n times 2, right? Because two compounding periods. Yeah, it would be 1 plus 10% over 2 into 1 times 2. right? So you will end up with 110.25. Yeah. You end up with 110.25. And that is your future value. Now, what 1 year interest rate? What is the 1 year interest rate that will make investing for 1 year the same as investing for 6 months at 10% with rollover? So if it's the same, you should end up with the same future value. No? So your future value should be 110.25, correct? Will be equal to your present value of 100 into 1 plus R, right? So 1 plus R will be 110.25 divided by 100. It is 1.1025 and R will be 10.25%. Right, R will be 10.25%. Now, what does this mean? It means if you earn R is 10.25%, right? Yeah. So it means an interest rate of 10.25 for 1 year is the same as 6 months semi-annual interest rate of 10%. Right? It's equivalent. An annual interest rate of 10.25 is equivalent to 6 months 10%. Semi-annual 10% is equivalent to annual 10.25. That is called the annual equivalent rate. This R is the annual equivalent rate. This is the AER. Right. So 1 plus AER should be equal to 1 plus R over T to the power T. Meaning AER will be equal to 1 plus R by T to the power T minus 1. This is how you calculate annual equivalent rate. All right. That is how you calculate annual equivalent rate, AER. Now, every bank is supposed to publish AER. So this is how you need to calculate it, right? Okay. Right. So the next example on present values. Right now we did future values. Next area is on present values. To illustrate, one thing I couldn't mention is going back to the future value example, right? You got an answer of what? For this question, 115.76. Now, how do you interpret this answer? It's easy enough to calculate a beautiful answer, 115.76, but how do you interpret? What you should know is $100 today is equivalent to 115.76 that you receive in 3 years at a compound rate of 5%, right? So receiving $100 today is the same as receiving 115.76 in 3 years if you can invest it at 3%. That's what it means. It's how you should interpret it. Right. So the next question to illustrate this on present values. Assume that 115.76 is due in 3 years, right? So the future value is 115.76. If a bank pays a guaranteed 5% interest rate each year, how much would you need to deposit now to have 115.76 in 3 years? All right. So let's calculate. You need to use the equation. At the exam, you don't have to prove the equation. You can simply use it. The present value is the future value divided by 1 plus r to the power n. Future value. Sorry, you need to draw the timeline. Future value is given as 115.76. N is 3. You are supposed to calculate present value if interest rate is 5%. So it's 115.76 divided by 1 plus 5% to the power 3. Which is $100. So $100. Now, how do you interpret this? $100, 115.76 receivable in 3 years at rate of 5% is equivalent to receiving $100 today. Yeah, you can round it up to 100. Okay, so what happens if you increase the discount rate? Same question, what happens if the discount rate is 0%? Then your present value will be 115.76 divided by 1 plus 0% to the power 3. So it's 115.76 divided by 1. It's 115.76. Then when the discount rate is 10%, present value 115.76 divided by 1 plus 10% to the power 3. $86.97. And when the discount rate is 20%, $66.99. right? So what happens when you keep increasing the discount rate? What happens when you keep increasing the discount rate? The present value keeps dropping, right? Present value is dropping. Okay. Also remember, 1 plus r to the power n is called the discount factor. Discount factor. 1 plus r to the power n. It's called the discount factor. R is called discount rate. Discount factor and the discount rate. Okay. Right. So as you keep increasing the discount rate, your present value keeps dropping. As you keep increasing the discount rate, your present value keeps dropping. And as you keep increasing the time period for a given discount rate, as the time period increases, your present value drops. Right. So practice questions. Suppose a US government bond promises to pay $2,249.73 3 years from now. If the ongoing interest rate on a 3-year government bond is 4%, how much is the bond worth today? And the future value, 2,249.73. 3 years from now. Interest rate, 4%. You asked to calculate present value. So the present value is the future value divided by 1 plus r to the power n. Future value 2,249.73 divided by 1 plus 4% to the power 3. $2,000. You get $2,000. Second question: How would you answer change if the bond matured in 5 years rather than in 3 years? Now, without working it out, what will your answer be if the bond is maturing in 5 years rather than in 3 years? You get the same face value of 2,249, same interest rate of 4%. How much should you invest? How much is the bond worth today? The answer should be the bond should be worth lower, because as the tenor increases, present value reduces. So n is 5, then your present value will be 2,249.73 divided by 1 plus 5%. Sorry, into the power. It's not 5%, it is 4%. 4% to the power, no, not 3, 5. 1,849 cents 11. Okay, so as the time period increases, your present value will drop. Third question: How much would $1 million due in 100 years be worth today if the discount rate was 5%? Okay, so N is 100. Future value $1 million. Present value is what you need to find, and the discount rate of 5%. Same equation. Present value is the future value over 1 plus R to the power n. Future value 1 million divided by 1 plus in case you can't see it. Present value, future value over 1 plus R to the power n. Future value is 1 million divided by 1 plus 5% power 100. $7,604. 1089. That is your present value. Cents 49, sorry. Okay, so I hope that was clear. Yeah. All right. So time is up. We will wind up for today. And next week, I will be meeting you all through a recorded message, through a recording. Okay, so hope you all understood. Have a good and a safe week. Thank you very much. I'll see you all next week through a recorded message, through a recorded meeting.